This is Robert Dashiell with the third edition of the Board Watch. Again, we're still learning. I'm still learning how to navigate through this process, particularly the technology end of it. And so I apologize that if this broadcast is in any way affected by what appears to be technology type issues. Today, we're going to be joined at some point by Robert Harrington, who is the owner of a local underground utility company, an African American Black owned utility company, R.E. Harrington Plumbing and Heating Incorporated. And the reason that Robert is going to be joining us is to discuss a relatively new initiative in Baltimore City to create the opportunity for more American Black companies and small businesses to do business with the city, at least in the area of underground utility construction. And what that means is underground utility construction includes everything from water mains to sewer lines and anything that you can imagine, conduit that's under the streets, under the ground, that cannot be seen. And unfortunately, as we know, the infrastructure in Baltimore City, as it is in many, in fact, if not most major cities, is aged. It was constructed many years ago, 100 years or more in some cases, and it's in serious need of repair. And the city has been in the process of effecting those repairs now for several years. And R.E. Harrington is one of the companies that over the last, I say 10 or 15 years, whose participation in that program has become pivotal in the success. Again, there are very few American Black owned companies that ever achieve the opportunity to submit bids as prime contractors. And I apologize to you if this appears to be overly technical in some respects, if my presentation appears to be overly technical in some respects. Part of it's because of the profession that I'm in as an attorney. And the other thing is I want this program to be both informative and educational. So if you bear with me for a second, and the connection, if you will, between contracting opportunities and why this program should be of interest to you is because contractors hire people. They hire people in all classifications to do the work. And so in many cases, the success and growth of a contractor can have direct impact on the amount of employment opportunity there is for people living in your own household, in your community, certainly in your neighborhood. And so as companies grow and succeed, generally that means that they are able to employ at a living wage more individuals. And in particular, as American Black companies grow and succeed, we know that they tend to employ more American Black folks, which enhances the ability, the opportunity, if you will, for employment in our community, so that not just we have more people in jobs, but we have more people in jobs that can support their families. As we all know, the fundamental and basic institution of any society is the family. And so it's very hard to function, and I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. It's very hard to function as a family if you live in a house that has a revolving door, meaning that in order to keep the roof over your head or food in the refrigerator or to pay the gas and electric bill, you've got to work 2 and 3 different jobs. And that leaves very little time or energy to interact between the people or among the people who live in that household. So I want to explain why the growth of a company impacts that. To the extent that the companies grow, they can offer employment, and they can offer employment at living wage, so that hopefully the wage earners within the household can earn sufficient salary and benefits so that they can actually function and preserve and nurture the family institution, which is vital and critical to the continuation of civilization as we would have it. Now, Baltimore City, with some time ago, I'm going to say within the last couple of years, took upon itself to initiate a program to try to increase the participation of American Black companies as prime contractors. Now, I got to tell you the difference between a prime contractor and subcontractor. This is old news to most of you, to many of you, I suppose. But a prime contractor is the company that has a contract directly with the city. A subcontractor is a company that has a contract with another company, and that other company is the one that has a contract with the city. Generally speaking, the more hands that touch your money before it gets to you, the more opportunity there is for it to be reduced before it gets to you. So that the optimum relationship, if you will, in most cases, is the one who has a direct contact with the party that's paying the money, which is the city. So the city initiated a program 2 or 3 years ago to try to increase the number of prime contractors, prime contracting companies that are owned by American Blacks. As I said, in the first area that the city looked at was in underground utility construction. One, it's a pressing and urgent need. Two, it has, by way of example, an American Black-owned company that has in fact been extremely successful in that endeavor in the world of underground utility construction. That company, as I said, is R.E. Harrington Plumbing and Heating. The city awarded a contract to R.E. Harrington, and under that contract, R.E. Harrington must not just perform what would be ordinarily the underground utility work, but it also must mentor a number of other smaller companies so that at the end, they will achieve the capacity, both from a technological point of view and from an experiential point of view, to allow them to subsequently to perform or to submit bids as prime contractors with the city. These small firms that are being mentored by R.E. Harrington are referred to as future GCs, future general contractors. One of the biggest impediments to smaller companies bidding as prime contractors historically has been the size of the contract. Many underground utility contracts, in fact, most are in the millions of dollars. And so what that means is, in order to submit a bid, you must have the capacity, you must have the demonstrated capacity to perform a contract in that volume, to that value. Baltimore City has a process for determining who's qualified to bid. It's called pre-qualification. If you want to bid as a prime contractor or even as a subcontractor in the city to perform that kind of work, you have to submit certain financial information on your company and its owners to the city, and the city will then give you a thing called a pre-qualification rating. That means that what that rating consists of is a dollar amount. And whatever that dollar amount is, it establishes the upper limit of the contract that you can bid for. In other words, if your rating is $1 million, then you cannot bid on a contract that the cost range of which is over $1 million. So that rating is extremely important in terms of your even being able to submit a bid. In addition to being able to submit the bid, accompanied by a thing called bid security, which is a bid bond, you must also furnish to the city a thing called a performance bond. And that is an assurance from a company that if you fail to perform the contract to the point where the city is forced to terminate it, then there's this insurance company. It's called a surety. It's not really insurance, a surety company that steps in and has the responsibility of completing that work or seeing to the completion of that work on behalf of the company that was unable to perform. Well, R.E. Harrington's job is to create companies that can perform, is to help create companies that can perform by giving them the on-the-job experience to perform and by enhancing their capacity financially to be able to perform. Now, what you need to perform on any contract, whether as a prime contractor or subcontractor, is capital. Again, if you recall from earlier broadcasts, commercial construction is different from home improvement work. Home improvement contractors, by law, can collect a certain amount of their money in advance of actually doing the work. In commercial construction, which includes government public works, that's not the case. You don't get paid until you've actually done the work, which means that you've got to have the funds to pay for it in advance of getting paid, because your employees are going to be paid on a weekly basis. Your material suppliers are going to be paid at least on a monthly basis, and sometimes COD, if you don't have COD, meaning cash on delivery, if you don't have an open account that has sufficient availability in it. And so you need working capital. The one thing that I'm extremely proud of Robert Harrington for doing is that in addition to providing the on-site training for these companies, he is also, not because he was required, but because he has a great interest in helping particularly American Black companies succeed, he is providing the collateral to the bank, to a banking institution that is providing working capital to these smaller businesses. And is doing that at his own risk, again, not because his contract with the city requires him to do it, but because of his own commitment to the program, of his own commitment to companies that started at the same level where he started in business and in this industry many, many years ago. We're going to be joined very soon by my co-host, Attorney Hassan Barnes, who just came in and who's with us now. Hassan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you, Bob. Good morning to people out there watching us online.
All right. Hassan heard part of our presentation, and Hassan is participating in this for a number of reasons. First, to assist me, but also because as one not historically involved in construction to the level that I am, Hassan can help me to focus upon the issues that are important to you. Again, this is new, and what I'm striving to find with Hassan's help is an area that actually helps a particular audience. And so I need to find out, and we will find out hopefully over time, what it is you want to know, in addition to what it is that I would hope to give you. Generally speaking, we will be talking about the actions that are taken by the Baltimore City Board of Estimates. And for you who, those of you who haven't heard previously and don't know, the Board of Estimates is the contracting arm of Baltimore City, at least for contracts in excess of $50,000, I think it is. The Board of Estimates is, again, not to repeat myself, but because many of you might not know, the Board of Estimates is a 5-member board that consists of the mayor, the city solicitor, the director of the Department of Public Works, the city comptroller, and the president of city council. You know that there's a new president of city council in Baltimore, Councilman Z. Cohen. I welcome him to the podium, if you will. On the Board of Estimates, the mayor essentially controls that board because, in addition to his vote, 2 of the other members of the board are his appointees, those being the city solicitor and the director of public works. So for all intents and purposes, the contracting arm of the city, the entity that controls who gets what in terms of contract awards, is the person, comes down to a single person, and that is by charter the mayor of Baltimore. Good morning, Hassan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. When I walked in, you were talking about people having funds and money to pay employees.
Right.
Because for a lot of time when you get a contract with the city, you have to pay your people when you get paid on the back end. what I've seen from my clients is people having trying to get bonded, and they have a hard time doing that. So they go to bigger companies to kind of partner. One of the things I've seen, or I haven't seen, is companies being able to build a bench of other companies that support them and help them financially, or building resources where they have, after their first few contracts, they put money aside so that when they go after governmental contracts, they have the actual funds to pay their employees. And that's one thing I've been trying to talk to my clients about and trying to find a way forward on. A lot of times when they bid for contracts, it's very thin margins. People assume you get a government contract, there's all this money to be had. That's maybe the bigger companies may have that, but smaller companies typically have very thin margins. We have to find a way, and I've been trying to find a way with clients of how to have money set aside so that when they do get contract, they can pay their people and they can move and kind of grow further without having to rob Peter to pay Paul, take out those horrible those loans where it's very predatory, or go after smaller contracts because they can't do the bigger ones because of payroll.
Yeah. There are a number of organizations, one that predominant that was created many years ago for the purpose of providing working capital and even surety bonding assistance to small and I'll call them minority contractors. And that's the organization that manages the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority. It's run by a gentleman named Stanley Tucker, and their mission is to provide working capital and bonding assistance to these small firms for the exact reason that you named. But there's a nuance. There's an element here that you have to understand when you're in business, and that is that affordability is the issue. It's more than a question of getting the loan, but it's a question of whether the repayment terms are consistent with the growth of your company, so that you don't end up just working to be able to make the next bill payment, and so the growth of the company, the development of the company becomes secondary. That your primary focus is, I got to pay that, I got to make that next installment payment. So money, the financing has to be structured consistent with your business plan, consistent with your plan for growing the company and for making sure that you're in a position to pay your current obligations as and when they become due. And that is a problem. The one thing that exacerbates that problem, particularly in the area of public works, is that you're competing against companies that have historically gotten opportunities that you've been denied. So that those companies have accumulated the resources that put them unless something changes, puts them in a perpetual position of, at least theoretically, being able to be more successful in public bidding than you. So in other words, how do you create a level playing field between a company that's had the opportunity for the last 200 or 300 years and a company that was just formed for the purpose of getting into the market, into that marketplace? And that question, frankly, has never been effectively addressed. It's like, there've been a number of attempts to put Band-Aids on the wound, I call it metaphorically, but there's been nothing that's actually removed the bullet. Because the bullet is structural in the sense that most public works still require the award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. For the reasons I've indicated, the times when the newbie to the industry is actually the low bidder are few and far between. Secondly, the idea of the security performance bond. The surety industry is very averse to risk taking. What that means is, if you don't have sufficient liquidity, and mean cash, to back them up in case of, to give them assurance that their bond will never be called upon, that is to say, if you can't prove that you won't actually need them, then you probably won't be able to get the bond in the first place. The same thing is with debt. You almost have to prove that you don't need the money in order to get the loan in the first place. And that's difficult to prove if you're starting at what I call ground zero. If you're new to the industry no matter what your personal expense may be, somebody's got to be willing to take a risk for you. And it's about relationship. And we typically, that is we, I mean, American Blacks, typically lack the relationships with other components or other people or institutions that have the resources that we need to grow, which means that that's where the government has to step in, as it has done traditionally, to provide that opportunity. That goal, presumably, is what resulted in the creation of the Minority Business Program and the Veterans Business Program, and the Small Business Reserve Program, and the 8A program at the federal level, other programs that are where the government steps in supposed to provide that assistance necessary to get the working capital and the other needs. The other thing is that the oftentimes what I found is that when we're developing, even those companies that have business plans, they presume that the government is going to perform its obligations in a timely way also.
Well, I'll say this. None of my clients presume that after doing any deals with the government, local, state, federal, you have to assume you're not getting paid on time. Yeah, okay. You have to have the contingencies in place where you have money to pay your employees, because employees don't care about it's a government contract. They want to get paid either 1st and 15th or every Friday, whatever schedule you have. The government has all kind of reasons why you might not get paid on time. The person who does procurement and bookkeeping or finance may be out sick. It could be any reason. And you have no recourse. So you have to, and I tell my clients this, it has to be enough money in the coffers to float you for a couple pay periods in the event that you don't get paid, whether the government has questions about the work you're doing, whether there's a work stoppage, whether there's an issue in billing or accounts receivable. You have to have enough money to go forward. And that's the biggest issue we see for small businesses. They don't have the money in the coffers to do that. So what big companies often do, they may get a line of credit. Say they get a line of credit for $1 million. They may have it sitting there, so when they need to pull from it, they can, and they replenish. Smaller businesses and new guys don't have the ability to do that. To your point, Bob, they don't have the history to show that they have enough money to get the line of credit. And I haven't been able to advise people in a way that's been as helpful as I want it to be, and how to get over that. My advice has been historically, hey, you need to have money set aside and save up. That's a reasonable approach. Many small businesses find it hard to do because of the such thin margin they have. It's harder and harder to do that. The government is there, and the government has provided supports, whether it's minority business programs or otherwise, to help businesses acquire contracts. I'll say this. I haven't found that the small businesses can't perform and do the work. That's never been the issue. So when we say government assistance, we don't mean government is giving work to people who aren't qualified or can't do the job. Although the qualified word is a red flag for me, or a red herring. But they can do the work. The issue is whether they have enough of the corporate structure in place where they can get by and do it in a way where everyone gets paid and was profitable. And that's where I oftentimes work with clients, even before they get to applying for contracts, making sure the corporate structure is in place so they can go after loans and go after the formal idea of doing business. So say there's a contract with Baltimore City for plowing. They plow snow during the storms, and you have to have vehicles available and a plow and all the things. Those can be very profitable if you have the actual supply. So if you have the manpower and the trucks and the ability to have people out, they can be profitable. Quite often, we don't have the financial means to have trucks sitting around all year long, hoping that it may snow in January, because our businesses don't work that way. We have a truck, then we're working it all year long. We may can convert it over, but we don't have the means to only do that kind of contract. So what I've oftentimes promoted to my clients is having a more global idea as to what your business is, and then picking up government contracts to subsidize your private work. And that way it's a more global exposure. You can do both government contracting and private, but you're always working, and then there's cash flow coming in all the time. I think it's helpful when the government see that you can operate and do things in the private sphere, so that when the issue is whether you're qualified or whether you can do the job, it's no question. If they see you shoveling or shoveling snow for corporations or for another state, oh yeah, he can do it. If they see you doing asphalt for private industry and private businesses for different parking lots around the city, and you apply for, hey, we can help the Department of Transportation, we can do some of this asphalt work as well. They can see it. They know you have revenue coming in. They're more willing to trust you with it because it's a track record that you can actually depend on and count on.
Yeah. And what Hassan's remarks really point out to those that are listening is that one of the resources that you need is competent counsel, someone who understands those issues. It's too late for the most part if to go to the attorney when you after you've done the work and you think the money is due and the government refuses to pay you. For there are a number of reasons why that's too late. Number one, you already haven't been paid. Number two, you've got to pay the attorney to go after it, and there's no money in government contracts to pay your attorneys. And number three, it doesn't happen overnight. The legal process is not a substitute for good business judgment and common sense and preparation and understanding of what you can, as Hassan says, you can be competent in the field. You can perform the work as well as anybody can. But if you haven't preserved and protected and adequately put forward your rights to payment and the mechanism for that in the contract up front, you're not going to make money. In fact, most often you're going to lose money because the only law that's guaranteed is Murphy. Murphy's law says what can go wrong will go wrong. Lawyers answer the question, what if? That's our job. So don't be reticent about seeking counsel and who pushes back when you tell them how much money you're going to make. How are you going to do that? What's your plan if that doesn't happen? What happens if you don't get paid on time? Where are you going to go? Because the legal system doesn't provide a remedy for those things in time. Everything in business is about timing. Timing is everything. Timing, why? Because as Hassan said, on Friday, the employees are going to get paid. You can't tell them the check didn't arrive. You can't tell them it's going to be there the following Monday. By Monday, they're already down in the Division of Labor and Industry filing a complaint against you for non-payment and subjecting you to possible trouble damages for not having paid on time. So that's too late. Which means also you have to have the resources up front. I apologize, but I've had to tell people, when people come to me to start a business sometimes, and I ask them a series of questions, because if you can't convince me that you know your business, I know I don't know it. But if you can't convince me that you don't know it, then I'm not gonna accept the engagement because it's too difficult. I ask people questions like, do you like to eat regular meals on time? Do you like to sleep, adequate sleep? Do you like to have time for recreation? Do you like to have time just to sit to yourself and contemplating? If the answer to those questions is yes, then go get a job. Start being in business is really not for you because you're never off work in business. If you're not continually trying to find ways to improve what you do, and when I say improve what you do, I don't mean it in the intellectual sense. I mean do it faster, do it better, and get paid for it. And get paid for it on time and get paid in an amount. See, it's not, people get enthralled why, and they get, they're impressed by, I have a $20 million contract. What difference does it make if at the end of the day you only got 25 cents to take home? It's not the amount of the money going in, it's the amount that comes out that's important. So I often ask people if they want to start a business. I don't have these conversations very often these days, but I ask them, how much money do you want from this business? Because if your goal is not to make money from business, then you're not supposed to be in business, because the goal of business is to make money, not necessarily for you personally, but also for the people that work for you, because they're necessary in order for the company to survive and to be profitable. So I ask, how much money do you want to make? If you can't answer that question, then you're not ready to talk to me or Hassan or any other attorney. You've got to do enough homework and research yourself, and you've got to be honest and realistic about yourself. Because the first one, the biggest sacrifice in business is made by the people who own it, who promote it. And because if anybody doesn't get paid on Friday, it's got to be you. It's going to be you. You're going to pay the employees first. You have to, not just because of the law, but because it's morally correct. These people didn't agree to take on your risk. These people didn't agree, which means that when the big payday comes, if you are successful, that's why you get a greater share of whatever rewards there are, because the risk is yours and your employees don't take it. So you do have to, and you have to assume the worst case up front. Because if everything goes as you plan, everybody's happy. But again, the only law that's guaranteed is Murphy. So that tells me after 50 some years in the business that not only will not everything go right, but there's always going to be that one thing that goes wrong that threatens the topple the whole thing, the domino theory, if you will. And I've seen it over and over and over again. So you have to be prepared. And in most cases, being prepared means having enough cash available, whether it's in your account or in your line of credit or wherever, but having enough cash available to weather the storm, so to speak, to take you through the period when things don't happen the way they should.
So I'll say this, and one point you made earlier on is having counsel. Quite often time, if you have counsel, they will advise you contrary to what you want to do. You may say, hey, I want to apply for this contract. They'll go through it like, yeah, you shouldn't apply for it. It's oftentimes I have many clients where we don't see eye to eye on their processes. That's on purpose. That's how it's supposed to be. Lawyers are risk averse. They want to make sure you succeed all the way around. Business owners typically have no idea what risk averse mean. They jump into deals that may not make sense. So it has to be a situation where you have someone on your shoulder, like there's always the cartoon where there's devil on the shoulder, angel on the shoulder. You want a lawyer on your shoulder and an accountant or a bookkeeper on your other shoulder. You want people who know the law and know business. Quite often, as a lawyer, I'm advising my clients not what the statute says, not what the law says, but the business part. I'm advising, right. Hey, you can do this, but this is how this normally works out. And that's important for small businesses, whether you're doing government contract or otherwise. You need to have someone there who you can talk to advise you in a real way. Your experiences are different than your lawyer's experience. Your lawyer may have 1,000 different clients who have similar situation that you have. They can tell you from perspective what's the best course of action. Now, it's not guaranteed, and they may be more cautious than you are, but you should know that. Quite often, and this is how it should be, clients may go forward over their lawyer objection. But that way they know there's an issue there before they go forward. They've taken time to consider the concerns of their competent counsel before they go forward. But that means is when you go forward and it gets screwed up, it's on you because you knew better. But you can't go in blind. What I find is people see government contracting as a way to make money and a way to do things in a way that's profitable without thinking about, oh, hey, my corporate structure isn't in place, or hey, I need a lawyer in place, or I need a bookkeeper or accountant in place. Obviously, the big numbers. And when you go from that perspective, from my experience, it never goes well. The numbers don't work out the way you think you do. Having the ideas on a piece of paper is different than actually having the idea, having money run to the bank and having people paid and having taxes. And it's a more corporate thing. So for small businesses, you can be a minority business and you can be the lowest bidder, but you have to make sure you have a system in place that you're doing business, not that you're doing work. The difference is doing work means you have a job. You may get a contract to do, pipe removal in the city, and you go and you have union crew and you remove pipes and you fix pipes. If that's all you're doing, that's a job. Now, if you have a contract for pipe removal and you're able to have a crew remove the pipes and you're able to take the proceeds from that to grow your company and put money in escrow and put money in business, then you have a real business. And the issue is knowing the difference. A lot of times, small businesses think in terms of, hey, we got to get some people on the ground and things moving to get people paid. You have to have a formal structure. I was talking to a client the other day. He came back to the office. He does construction work and he was getting sued. And he brought me a complaint. The complaint was about this thick. So he brought me a complaint. He was like, yeah, I think I'm not going to respond to it. I'm like, well, bring me the complaint. I see the complaint, how thick it is. Like, yeah, another subcontractor told me don't respond to it. They can get it worked out. So my response was, of course, were you served? You're like, well, yeah, I was served. When were you served? A couple of days ago. Yeah. We're going to respond to it. Right. We have to respond to it. It can't be another guy or another business told you, hey, we didn't do anything wrong, so don't respond, because that business doesn't have counsel and you do. So we're going to respond and we're going to defend it and we're going to try to get rid of it if we possibly can. But you have counsel, so we're going to 100% respond to it, and you're going to spend money on it, and you're going to fight back. Even if you're right, you still going to spend money on it. That's part of doing business. So he has money set aside for counsel fees because we've had prior conversations. Say, hey, when you do your budget, the budget isn't only for the manpower you have and for you getting paid. It's for contingencies, legal fees, accounting fees, money to grow your business, and you need to have buckets set aside for those things in order for you to grow. Because otherwise, having a contract with the city don't mean anything if you're not going to be able to use it to grow your business.
That Hassan is speaking to the issue of not just having the resources, but making effective use of the resources that are available to you. as I said earlier, if your first conversation with the attorney is when your bill hasn't been paid on time or hasn't been paid in a sufficient amount, that's probably, it may not be too late, but it's going to be more costly in most cases than if you had talked to that attorney up front. You'd be surprised how many people bring a contract to me and they're elated, they're overjoyed, they've got, because it says they're going to get paid $1 million. And they look at me and I say, review it. And I said, well, when are you going to get paid? Well, they're going to pay me monthly. I said, well, where does it say that? Doesn't say it. Okay. What do you have to do to get paid? I just have to do the work. I mean, yes, that's true, but that's not the answer to the question. Or what do you have to do to get paid? You got to submit a requisition. When does that have to be in? What has to be in that requisition? Who does it go to? Right? What do you have to submit along with it in order to make in other words, you make a list of the things what is necessary for me to get paid on this contract. And there are two columns, the things that you control and the things that you don't control. The things that you control typically simply doing the work as you're supposed to do. The bulk of the things that could affect whether you get paid are on the side that you don't control. That's where the focus has got to be. That's where, if there's the doubt about getting paid, it's got to be resolved. It's not enough to say I'm going to get paid monthly without knowing when the bill is supposed to be submitted. It's not enough to say that I'm going to get paid monthly without knowing what's got to be in the bill when it's submitted. It's not enough to say I'm going to get paid monthly without knowing who has to approve payment, whether it's a job inspector or a superintendent, or what are the steps. You need to understand everything that has to happen in order for you to get paid. And the contract has to adequately reflect that. In the world of public contracts, if it's not on paper, it didn't happen. If it's not written down, I didn't say it. If it's not written down, you have no obligation. You have no right to it. And that's particularly true in public contracting, because the law is, if the contract, without a contract, I told someone yesterday that didn't have a written agreement with the government, but they'd had a discussion and they thought that the service was needed and they thought they would pay for it. So they went ahead in advance of getting the contract and they went ahead and did the work. Well, guess what? Government said, well, unfortunately, we couldn't get it approved. So the company says, okay, well, I understand. Just pay me for what I did. No, you don't get paid for what you did because you didn't have a contract. It's not like dealing with private people where you can say, well, you're not entitled to be unjustly enriched. You can't take my work or the value of my work and not pay it when you knew I was doing it. You said, okay, you allowed me to do it. You allowed me to come onto your property. And so you have to pay me because otherwise you'd be unjustly enriched. It's a legal concept. That doesn't work with the government. The governor could sit there perched on the second floor of the State House and watch you push those all day long and say, even wave at you, say, thank you, you're doing a great job. And you say, okay, at the end of the day, where's my check? What check? Where's your contract? No contract, no check. You did a nice job. See you next time. You can't assume. Get rid of the word assumption. The minute you assume something, you're putting yourself in harm's way. You're putting yourself in. Get rid of it. Contracting is not intuitive. Common sense is important, but that's never written to the contract. Good faith is important, but the contract never says what good faith looks like in application. It's just words. It's all about the relationship with the people who interpret those words. And in many cases, that relationship is born from their assessment of your ability and your knowledge to do your work. If the more credibility you have as being able to perform the work, and credibility is manifested in a number of ways, but if you can convince me or the owner that you really know what you're doing, the more likely it is that you're going to get paid on time, because they ain't going to fool with you. Because they're not going to want to risk their job in a situation where they know that they were not likely to prevail. Because all they're really, most bureaucrats, only thing they really care about is making sure that the boss doesn't get mad at them. You're not the primary concern when you're dealing with government. a government employee, the primary concern is for them is keeping their job. And if you have to not get paid in order for them to keep their job, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to get paid. Unfortunately, I've had situations where, too many situations where government people believe that they are saving taxpayer money by withholding payment that they know in reality is due. Because they think that, well, the longer they can hold on to it, they're saving the taxpayer money. Unfortunately, that's a mentality that it's wrong, it's erroneous, but that's what you sometimes have to deal with, because that's the mentality of the person that you have to, that's in the chain and on that side of the ledger that says, I got to go past this person to get paid. So you have to be prepared to deal with that kind of mentality. You have to be prepared, and you got to be able to recognize it early in the process. Don't get caught up in going to meetings. People are, or let's meet about it. I got a client now who was owed some money by Baltimore City Public Schools, and the money was owed near the end of December, and of course near the end of December nobody's there. I mean, it's Christmas, it's New Year's, and so they didn't get paid on time. So they sent me a long email that they wrote to the accounts payable saying, let's have a meeting. And they sent it to me and they said, what do you think about the email? I said, I think it's trash. Why? Because you didn't ask for what you need. You don't need to meet, you need the money. I don't care. I don't want to meet with you. I want the check. I want to when and I'd say this and turn it back to us on for a second. But I once had a conversation with Martin O'Malley when he was mayor. During his first term, and I represented a contractor who hadn't been paid, and I happened to run into O'Malley at a fundraiser. He knew me and knew about me, so forth. So I came up to him and I said, Mayor, I want to have a meeting, and I told him what the situation was, and he said his response was, what do you want? Do you want to meet with me, or you want me to tell my people to pay your client? I said, tell your people to pay my client. He said, fine, it's done. We don't need to meet. Great response. Because you got to stay focused on what the objective is. The objective is not to have a meeting. Government will meet you to death. Because when they're in meetings, they record that as doing work. That's like pushing a building all day, getting sweaty and funky, and the building doesn't move. The law, physics says you haven't done any work because nothing moved. So you don't want to engage in activity where nothing moves, where it's fruitless. If getting paid is the issue, getting paid had to be at the top of the agenda every day. Every communication, if you owed money, I told the client who the school system owed money, I said, every email to them, I had to remind them of how much money is owed and that it's past due. I don't care if it's hello, good morning, you owe me $20 and it's been due since last week. Oh, what you having for lunch today? Oh, by the way, you owe me $10 and it's overdue. You have to, and don't be ashamed or embarrassed to demand that which you've already entitled to. Sometimes we try to prove our value by demonstrating our willingness to be lenient to people who owe us, to whom an obligation is owed. No, that doesn't get you in it. That makes them think that you're stupid. Really? Because I'm not embarrassed. Look, I'll get in my car if a client owes me money, and I knock on wood. Fortunately, these days that doesn't happen. But if a client owes me money, I'm not too embarrassed or high up to get in my car and drive to your office. You tell me, well, the check is ready, we're gonna mail it. No. I ain't got nothing to do for the next hour. I'll be there in a half hour to pick my check up. And they say, well, you don't want to. If you do that, that makes it seem like you need money. I do. That's why I work. I do. I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm not. I didn't inherit what Elon Musk inherited or Donald Trump inherited. And believe it or not, I don't even look like either one of them.
What?
Okay?
Really? Let me jump in for a second. So I'll say this. And for small businesses, we look at it a certain kind of way. Money owed for you is something different than the person who owes you money. So if you're doing business with another small business and money is due to you, you have a pretty good understanding. They know what it means that they can get paid. Dealing with the government, the person who didn't pay you is the government. The government has no emotions about money. The government doesn't need money. The government makes money. The federal government makes money, and the state government, they don't make it, but close enough. They can allocate funds all kind of ways. The people who work in the government are not the government. You're not getting paid, and the person has to hit a button. They don't have any emotion about that. It's not a personal thing. They're not vested in making sure you get paid. Right. These are employees, and they get paid every 2 weeks, no matter what. So when you go in, you can't think about it in terms of they got to pay you because they know the money's due. The money may be due. It may be on the screen that you're due to get paid. No one cares the way you think they care because it's a corporate structure. It's government. The government don't necessarily have a feeling about whether you got paid or not. The government has no feelings. It's an entity. It doesn't feel about you getting paid. So whether or not you got mortgage to pay or your kid's private school tuition is due, none of that matters to the government at all. So I would say keep that in mind. And my other thought, as you were talking, Bob, what small businesses typically don't do that big businesses do is have a person who does either forecasting or a person who helps make decisions outside the business. So what I find is small businesses can do the job they do very well. Mm-hmm. If they do landscaping, they can do landscaping very well. Mm-hmm. If they do concrete, they do it very well. But they don't take time to do the other things very well. When you're in business, it's not that you're a landscaper, you have a company doing landscaping. So your business is about getting money, as Bob said, but that means something different than what you think it means. It means you have people who can do the landscaping, but you have a formal structure about making sure the landscaping is profitable, that money's in and money's out. That's a different skill set. And quite often, small businesses don't take time to grow that skill set. You have to know how to do the other things beyond the business. Because the reality is the person who's hiring you for landscaping, although you're the best landscaper in the world, they don't mind taking the second best in the world, the third best in the world, the fourth best in the world. And you may have a mediocre landscaper who's more profitable than you are because they're not worried about the cutting the grass. They're more worried about their profitability. Mm-hmm. And they do everything they can do to make sure it's profitable and invoices are paid on time. That's how you build your business, making sure the business portion. So for the small businesses, we talk about forecasting and figuring out payroll. And maybe it may be important for some small businesses to hire and retain either full-time people to do business development and business formation and business advisement, and or in the gig economy, you can hire a person part-time or as needed for support for your forecasting and for your business ventures, right? So say you wanted to go after if we do this all the time for small businesses, they go and get someone to write for a contract for the city or for the state or for the federal government, and they hire a third party because they don't know how to do contracting that well. They have someone write for them. They give the actual contract and they do the work. Why not also have someone who negotiate contracts on the back end? Why not also have someone, when it's time to talk to the federal government or the state government or the city government, someone to sit beside you who has experience dealing with them, whether it's a lawyer or a third-party consultant to negotiate, hey, we need to increase our actual contract. We bid for one amount, but the numbers have changed. The big firms do it all the time. They said change orders in. They know how to do it. Small companies don't do it as well because they don't know how to. It may be worth your while to hire additional professionals to help you forecast and to learn how to make your bid more profitable. Quite often, big companies go into bids, they bid knowing that the number they have is low. That's why they go with the lowest number, because they know they're going to put money on the back end. They know how to do change orders and they know how to modify the bid. Once you got the money in, they know how to do things that small companies don't know how to do in any real way. And that's why oftentimes you'll see the big companies aren't about not making money. So although they can bid lower than a smaller company because they have economy of scales, they still want the most money as possible. Mm-hmm. So they do both. They are able to come in with a lower number, but they come in with a lower number knowing they can raise that number up because they're going to add different things to the actual bid as it goes along. We see this more in federal government contracts than the state, but it happens in state and it happens in city contracts as well. They come in with one number, get the bid from a minority, local, small company who can do the work and have the lowest, and it should have the lowest number, and they come in and they're able to bid it up. If you have people around you to support your team, I think you may do better. I always advise my clients, and quite often my clients are one-man shows, right? So it may be one guy, he may have a whole crew of people, and they're running the business. I advise them, bring people on, bring other management on, find ways to put money aside to bring management on. And I know for people out online, you're thinking, money from where? We don't have any additional money. We're trying to do business to bring money in. You can't put the cart before the horse. You have to find a way to have revenue coming in. I don't care if you take smaller deals and hoard money, but you have to find a way. There's different services and different programs around to help you financially, but at some point you have to have the means. If you're a minority contractor, primarily if you're a black contractor, your history has been having to make things work with less. It hasn't changed. That part hasn't changed. So we have a history of knowing how to make things work with less. We know how to do it, but we have to go in knowing that the odds are stacked against us, and we have to do things differently. So you have to have money aside and the resources, or do what some people don't want to do. Say, look, I'll bring you one. I'll hire a law firm. We can't pay Attorney Barnes. What we can do is we'll find a strategy where we'll bring you as in-house counsel, and we'll give you a part of the company. So as we do work and we bring and be profitable, you'll get paid. Many people would do that deal. You can bring other people in and do the same thing. Owners don't want to do that because they don't want to give equity of their company up. But you can, it's one or the other. Either you pay them money, or you can give them interest. But something had to happen, and it may be worth your while to give a third party. I have a colleague of mine who's a bookkeeper. I've talked to her about it. She has many clients who need support, and I've advised her, hey, you can do the work. They can't pay you. Have them give you part of the company, and you can be their in-house financial person and do all the things, not only the taxes and the advisement, but all things they need. And if it works out, you all get paid. If it don't work out, then you gave some volunteer time. It's a good deal. Oftentimes, small businesses don't value that, and they feel like they've been taken advantage of. And they may be sometimes, but that may be an option you have. Never be afraid to look at different options about how to do the business in a way that's going to help you move forward.
In other words, bears get fed, hogs get slaughtered.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you go into the transaction only thinking about yourself and not concerned about how it affects other people, you can rest assured the other people you're dealing with are going to adopt that same attitude towards you. And the reality of it is you only succeed when you're working together cooperatively. It's a team effort. Even in government contracting, I've had a heck of a time over the years trying to explain to or convince the heads of departments in city, at the state level. Look, when a contract is awarded and the thing called a notice to proceed is issued, that's not a declaration of war between the government and the contract. That's a declaration of the beginning of a partnership activity. What is the activity? The completion of that contract successfully on time and getting you paid. That you got to work together to make that happen. You can't because you may treat a lawyer like an American Express card and keep it in your pocket, but that lawyer can't come. The lawyer's not going to be with you out there on the job site. The lawyer's not going to be sitting with you in the progress meetings because you can't afford it. And number one, the lawyer's not effective. The lawyer doesn't know your business in that fact. Is not responsible for that business. And you don't want the lawyer involved to that extent because you need that third eye, that other eye that can see things differently than you do. But we cannot help but can become biased in our view of things because we have to be. Anybody tells you that the system, that anybody in the system is operating without a bias, they're lying. We of course we have bias. The goal is to have people making decisions who do not allow their personal bias to affect their good judgment and their willingness and to apply the principles and the law as it should be in a fair and equitable situation. But to try to find somebody who doesn't have bias is ridiculous. We're human beings. We, of course, so effective use of resources is absolutely critical. Now, for those of you who are interested in doing business as a minority in the minority business spectrum, you know that you first have to get this thing called certification, and that's whether it's at city, state, or in the federal level. Somebody has to decide that you are eligible for the quote preference that is given to companies that are owned and controlled and managed by individuals of a certain classification. You know now probably that most people would tell you that it is unconstitutional to make race a qualifying factor for certification or for at least for awarding or providing of any governmental assistance. In fact, it's even been challenged in the private sector. You recall that I've seen lawsuits against private companies who say that their mission is to provide support for only certain classifications that are based upon either race or sex, and they've been sued. Those suits have been unsuccessful. But see, every time somebody files a lawsuit, it costs somebody money, regardless of the outcome. Because you got to hire a lawyer. You got to be in those situations. You got to have the resources to protect yourself and to preserve and nurture your own interests. It's just It's a cost of doing business. Hold on. We're in a room where these lights are on a timer, and I don't know how to change it. That's part of my technological challenge. I got to go walk, and the motion detector will detect us, and I'll be back. Although in real life, I'm probably just as dark as up here now.
Well, while you do that, I'll jump in. We're here to hopefully provide some support for small businesses, small minority businesses who want to do work with the city and or other government entities. And the goal is to provide some information and helpful information for you in terms of how you form your thought process. I want to make sure that we are able to give valuable information so when you're a business owner, what you get paid for isn't what you think. You assume you get paid for doing the thing you got a contract for. No, you get paid for your ability to reason out the work and plan out in a reasonable way. As part of your planning, I would advise, and certainly as we go along every week, we'll talk about more about this, doing forecasts, learning how to forecast in a reasonable way that's helpful for you and helpful for your team. And forecast in a way that you include growth as your forecast. The forecast can't to be more profit. The forecast has to be growth. If your business is only a 1 or 2 man show and you hire employees as you need them, that's not a business, it's a job, and you have some help. The goal is to make a formal business, right? So we look around, and because in that age, we can see so many things. We see corporations, we see huge corporations like Microsoft and Meta. But what do you see? You see, I recall I was stricken years ago. I read a book from Steve Jobs. He talked about how at some point he left Apple. He was kicked out of Apple. The company he started got kicked out. He went and bought Pixar. They brought him back to Apple. So he was running both Pixar and Apple at the time. Building out companies, he was running both at the time. And he was home every day by like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. at night. And I had my own practice. I had a couple employees. And I was stricken because I was home maybe 11 o'clock at night, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I had one job, and it wasn't a $1 billion company. And he had $2 billion companies, and he was home every night before I was because he had a corporate structure, and he had a business entity, and they had forecasts, and they had plans. They had people doing things when he wasn't there. They had corporate culture. A lot of time with small businesses, the corporate culture is only doing the job. And one of the things I want to do here is make sure we can hopefully help steer you in a direction where you learn how to forecast and how to think about growth of your business in a real way. The reality is when you do good work, government contract may be valuable for you. It may not be. You can get the same amount of money, if not more, doing private work. And you will get it if you can show that you're able to do the work and you have the format and the structure to do it. But that takes planning, it takes thought process, it takes mental acuity, and it takes reason. And that's what the owners have to learn. And that's why I push my clients who are business owners, take time to think. We have sessions where we sometimes do brainstorms. We sit down and think about what are your options. Now, you're right. I don't know my client's business anywhere near as well as they do. And I shouldn't. I don't endeavor to.
Right.
But I do know basic business. And when you start saying things, I know things around the business. So when you say, hey, I got a company and we're doing government contracting, we're hiring for veterans between New York and Virginia for our kind of things. Okay, how are you doing that? Well, we can go and we're going to do job fairs. Okay, tell me more about that. How you can get veterans? First of all, have you identified where the biggest pool of veterans are in the area? Oh, well, I have a pretty good idea. The VA is right downtown Baltimore, so let's go look. Okay, and the veteran that you identify there, and so having the questions start to pull out a bunch of other questions that the client hadn't thought about, and it helps to formalize and hone and sharpen their ideas as to what they want to do. We can't do that here because certainly you guys aren't able to call in or ask questions that frequently to hone down, but to get you thinking about, hey, I'm hoping that you guys see this show and say, you know what, I may need to hire a lawyer. I may need to call somebody. It may be Bob, it may be myself, it may be a whole other lawyer, but I may need to call someone and have a consult with that lawyer to have a better idea as to how to build my business and see whether or not we should be even applying for government contracts yet, or whether we have more work to do.
Two things before we sign off. One, I want to let you know that Robert Harrington didn't join us because he was out in the field working with a future general contractor to try to teach him how to do his work. He will be with us at a later time. Secondly, I want you to go to the website of the Baltimore City Comptroller's Office, pull from that, go to the Board of Estimates menu selection, pull for the agenda, past agenda from the board's January 22nd meeting, which was the last meeting. because next week we're actually going to be talking about some things from that agenda. And if the next agenda is published, those things as well. But I want you to look at it, because if you review the agenda and see things on there that are of interest to you, we want you to send us a note in the chat line and we can talk about those things. And or you can call us to talk about those things. If you need to reach me, my number is 410-547-8820. And Attorney
me,
Barnes?
The office number is 443-423-0548.
Thank you so much. See you next Friday on the Boardwalk.
Take care, guys.